Good evening and welcome to Broadcasting Scotland. I'm sorry we're a little late tonight, that's my fault. A bit of technical difficulty here. Um, so I'm just going to start with the Ukraine update, day 594. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said today he had good news on artillery and air defence supplies after talks with his Romanian counterpart Klaus Iohannis in Bucharest, but he gave no further details. Zelensky also said that everything possible should be done to prevent Russia turning part of the Black Sea or the Danube region into what he described as a maritime dead zone. Ukraine said today that it was holding two senior defense ministry officials on suspicion of embezzling $7 million earmarked for buying bulletproof vests. The State Bureau of Investigation said the two unnamed officials ordered low-quality body armour from abroad. Investigators believe a subsea gas pipeline connecting Finland and Estonia may have been deliberately damaged. The National Police of Ukraine has documented nearly 100,000 war crimes committed by Russian forces in Ukraine, according to Ivan Vyhovsky, the head of the body. The UK Ministry of Defence has said Russia is unlikely to launch an additional mobilisation drive before the presidential election next year. A senior Russian diplomat, Sergei Ryabkov, has said that Russia will move to revoke the ratification of a global nuclear test ban to put itself on par with the US, but will resume nuclear tests only if Washington does it first. A Russian court has dismissed a complaint by the Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich against the extension of his pre-trial detention more than 6 months after his arrest on spying charges. Gershkovich is the first American journalist to be held in Russia on spying charges since the end of the Cold War. Moneo Suzuki, a pro-Russia Japanese politician, left his opposition party today after facing criticism for making a surprise visit to Moscow and declaring his support for Russia to win the war in Ukraine. UEFA has abandoned plans to reinstate Russian U17 teams into next year's youth football European Championships. President Zelensky said it was in Russia's interest to stoke war in the Middle East, to create a new source of pain and suffering that would weaken global unity, create divisions, and help Russia in undermining freedom in Europe. Top UN trade official Rebecca Greenspan met with Russian officials in Moscow on Monday for talks aimed at ending the unimpeded access to global markets for grain and fertilizer from Russia and Ukraine. Israel and Gaza latest. The Israeli military said today that Hamas operatives had nowhere to hide in Gaza and that its air force was carrying out intensive airstrikes in waves every 4 hours. We will reach them everywhere, Chief Military Spokesperson Daniel Hagari said in a briefing. The Israeli Air Force has announced on social media that it's launching an extensive attack against terror targets of the terrorist organisation Hamas in the Gaza Strip. The UN Human Rights Chief said that Israeli air operations had struck residential buildings, including tower blocks, as well as schools and UN buildings across Gaza, resulting in civilian casualties. Gaza's health ministry has put Palestinian casualty figures at least 770 killed and 4,000 wounded by Israeli airstrikes since Saturday. They additionally claim that at least another 18 people were killed and 100 injured in the West Bank since Saturday. The Israeli military said it recovered the bodies of more than 1,500 Hamas fighters inside Israel and mostly secured its border with Gaza after a night of intensified airstrikes across the enclave that destroyed infrastructure and displaced thousands. Israeli media reports that Hamas fighters killed about 900 people inside Israel during the weekend incursion. Israel has taken control of the Gaza border fence breached by Palestinian Hamas fighters at the weekend and is planting mines in the parts where the barrier was toppled. The chief military spokesperson said there had been no new infiltrations from Gaza since Monday. The Times of Israel has reported that officers are preparing to inform 100 families that their loved ones have been taken hostage by Hamas and are being held in Gaza. A senior member of the militant group has said it intends to use the dozens of hostages being held in Gaza to secure the release of Palestinians detained in Israel and overseas. The Israeli Air Force confirmed it had flown back hundreds of IDF soldiers who were abroad in order to contribute to the IDF's efforts to mobilize additional forces to continue fighting. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei said Iran was not involved in the Hamas attack on Israel, but hailed what he called Israel's irreparable military and intelligence defeat. We kiss the hands of those who planned this attack on the Zionist regime, Khamenei said in his first televised speech since the attack. The French President Emmanuel Macron said the comments were unacceptable. Spanish acting Foreign Minister Jose Manuel Albares said his government opposed the proposal to suspend EU aid to Palestinians. He said this cooperation must continue. We cannot confuse Hamas, which is in the list of EU's terrorist groups, with the Palestinian population, or the Palestinian Authority, or the UN organisations on the ground. His views were echoed by France's Foreign Ministry, which issued a statement in Paris this morning saying we're not in favour of suspending aid that directly benefits the Palestinian people. Austria is arranging an evacuation of its citizens from Israel by military transport aircraft on Wednesday, Chancellor Karl Nehammer said. Cyprus has said it's ready to help with the evacuation of nationals from third countries who might want to leave Israel. Russia's Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov has said Moscow and Washington have not been in contact over the escalation of the conflict. So Keir Starmer asks Conservative voters to switch to Labour. Keir Starmer made a direct appeal for Conservative voters to the Labour Party at the general election, using a largely policy-light speech to the Labour conference to present his party as fiscally responsible but able to plan for the long term. The Labour leader, who delivered the address in Liverpool in his shirt sleeves after a protester covered his jacket in glitter as he began, promised what he called an entirely new approach to politics. In a speech targeted at the Conservatives and Rishi Sunak, Starmer contrasted the past 13 years of Tory rule with what he described as the real Britain. He said, if you are a Conservative voter who despairs of this, if you look in horror at the descent of your party into the murky waters of populism and conspiracy with no argument for economic change, if you feel our children need a party that conserves, that fights for our union, our environment, the rule of law, family life, the careful bond between this generation and the next, then let me tell you, Britain already has one, and you can join it. It's this Labour Party. Commenting on Sir Keir Starmer's speech, SNP Social Justice spokesperson David Linden MP said, for all the empty rhetoric, Sir Keir Starmer remains wedded to Tory austerity cuts, Brexit and the same damaging Westminster policies that got the UK into this mess. Families are suffering from the soaring cost of living in the UK and need help right now, but Sir Keir failed to outline a single policy to help households this winter, and his admission the Labour Party will continue to impose a hard Tory Brexit will choke off economic growth permanently. Yesterday, Peter Mandelson warned Labour not to go too far in bringing in labour market reforms to benefit workers, and attacked Unite's Sharon Graham while describing the past decade of party leaders as weak. In a combative speech to a City of London Corporation dinner at the party conference, the Labour peer, former business secretary and architect of the 1997 election victory, warned against making labour market reforms that swung towards the other extreme. We have to be careful about labour market reform, he said. It's not easy to say to my party, who are very keen to take the pendulum back from where it has been as a result of party political legislation introduced by the Conservatives. But we have to be careful about that pendulum so that it ends up in the centre and not the other extreme. He said he was in favour of repealing some anti-strike legislation brought in by the Conservatives, but he did not want businesses to get the wrong idea that Labour was abandoning flexibility in the labour market. The First Minister calls for Gaza humanitarian corridor. First Minister Humza Yousaf has today written to the Foreign Secretary James Cleverly, supporting the establishment of a humanitarian corridor in Gaza to allow civilian evacuation. In his letter, the First Minister unequivocally condemned the abhorrent terrorist actions of Hamas and said that Israel, like any other country, has a right to protect itself and its citizens from terror. Mr. Yousaf said that too many innocent people have already lost their lives as a consequence of these completely unjustifiable and illegitimate attacks by Hamas. The FM count innocent men, women and children cannot and should not pay the price for the actions of a terrorist group, and that collective punishment of innocent civilians cannot be justified will do nothing to set conditions for peace in the region. Mr. Yousaf said as the number of civilians displaced in Gaza increases and with supplies restricted, innocent people are being affected, and he warned that conditions will worsen. The United Secretary General has called for relevant parties to allow United Nations access to deliver urgent humanitarian assistance to Palestinian civilians trapped and helpless in the Gaza Strip, and the international community to mobilise to provide support, a view which the FM said he supports. He asked the UK government to call on the government of Israel to ensure that civilians are protected and to put in place an immediate ceasefire to allow the safe passage of civilians through the Rafah border and to open a humanitarian corridor into Gaza to allow supplies, including food, fuel, water, and medical supplies, for those civilians who are trapped, helpless, and cannot leave. Mr. Youssef called on the international community to be proactive and work towards an immediate ceasefire and a long-lasting peace that sees Israelis and Palestinians treated as equals. He said the Scottish Government stands ready to assist any efforts to support those who find themselves caught up in this tragic situation. And of course, Humza Yousaf's parents-in-law are in Gaza at the moment and struggling to leave. The IMF warned the UK to have the highest inflation rate and slowest growth in the G7 next year. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, has warned that the Bank of England will need to keep interest rates high into 2024 as the UK struggles with a combination of weak growth and persistent inflation. In its half-yearly update on the global economy, the IMF said growth had already slowed fairly sharply and painted a downbeat picture for the government as it enters what will almost certainly be an election year. The IMF estimates the UK will be the slowest growing economy in the G7 group of advanced nations next year, although Pierre-Olivier Gourinchas, the IMF's economic counsellor, said the WO's forecast of interest rates peaking at 6% had been revised down to 5.5%. At the start of 2023, the IMF predicted the UK would contract by 0.3% this year, but now believes it will expand by 0.5%. Drew Henry, MP, the SNP's economy spokesman, has warned that with both the Tories and Labour welded on major economic policies like Brexit, there is no end in sight to the economic turmoil created by Westminster. Commenting, Drew Henry said, "The latest analysis from the IMF confirms what we already know. The economic turmoil created by Westminster is here to stay. Households across Scotland continue to pay the price for Westminster incompetence and their commitment to a broken Brexit that only makes families poorer. However, with Labour also welded to Brexit, it's clear that no matter who enters number 10 after the next election, the economic turmoil will continue. Time and time again, we see how small independent countries similar to Scotland are fairer and wealthier than the UK. Why not Scotland?" The Home Office is to send asylum seekers back to the Bibby Stockholm barge. The Home Office is planning to return asylum seekers to the Bibby Stockholm barge next week, following a lengthy evacuation after Legionella was found there. 39 people were briefly accommodated on the barge between the 7th and the 11th of August, but were evacuated after the discovery of Legionella, which was confirmed on the day they arrived. If the return goes ahead on the 19th of October as planned, the barge will have been empty for 68 days after being occupied for less than 5 days. The Home Office said it was necessary to move asylum seekers to the barge to reduce the costly hotel bill for accommodating them. This sum has reached about $8 million a day, according to the annual report. According to media reports, the barge has cost the Home Office almost $300,000 a week while it has been empty. The notice sent on Monday has the title Notice of Relocation and says, "You are being moved to the Bibby Stockholm on Thursday the 19th of October 2023. It adds that the barge is not a place of detention, but people will need to sign in and out when they come and go, so we can assure your safety. It adds that asylum seekers may have to share rooms." The barge has been beset with problems related to the Legionella bacteria found on board, problems with the plumbing system identified by Wessex Water, and concerns about fire safety. The 39 people who were moved onto the barge have repeatedly protested about conditions there and said they do not want to return to the prison-like environment. A Home Office spokesperson said, "The Home Office has started to send letters to asylum seekers to confirm the re-embarkation of the Bibby Stockholm and notify them that they will be accommodated on board following the vessel completing all necessary tests. The Home Office changed its policy, now giving people seeking asylum only 5 working days to challenge being moved onto the barge." A Freedom of Information request from the Home Office, obtained by the anti-trafficking organisation After Exploitation on Monday, said 136 barge notices had been issued so far. Rwanda accused of campaign of repression against dissidents. A Human Rights Watch has said that Rwandan authorities are coordinating a systematic campaign of repression at home and abroad against political activists, suspected dissidents and their family members, raising questions about plans by the UK government to send asylum seekers there. The US-based rights group details an alleged campaign of extraterritorial killings, kidnappings and intimidation, as well as arbitrary arrests and enforced disappearance on Rwandan soil. The 115-page report, which covers the year since 2017, has been published in the same week that the UK Supreme Court is hearing the Home Secretary's appeal against a June court ruling deeming it unlawful to send asylum seekers to Rwanda. The report challenges Susanna Braverman's claim that Rwanda is a safe destination and reliable partner. Victoire Ingabire, a Rwandan opposition leader who spent 8 years in prison on terrorism charges, said, "This report exposes the reality of the Rwandan regime. The principles of civilian government have been completely ignored in Rwanda." Human Rights Watch has called on the UK to rescind the Migration and Economic Development Partnership that Braverman's predecessor, Priti Patel, signed with Rwanda in 2022, in light of the real risks that asylum seekers would face, and to investigate threats to Rwandan residents in Britain and make future assistance to the aid-dependent African state conditional on significant change to its repressive practices. The Rwandan government accused HRW of distorting the reality of Rwanda. A post on X, Twitter, said, "Any balanced assessment of Rwanda's record in advancing the rights, well-being and dignity of Rwandans over the past 29 years would recognise remarkable transformational progress. Rwanda will not be deterred from this work by bad faith actors advancing a politicised agenda." In the 1994 Rwandan genocide, up to 1 million people died. Since then, the country has often been hailed as a miracle of development. Paul Kagame, who's been president since 2000, recently announced his intention to run for a fourth term as head of state. The picture that HRW paints is at odds with the former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson's description of Rwanda as a place where asylum seekers could prosper and thrive. Drawing on interviews with more than 150 people in the UK, Australia, the US, Canada, Belgium, France, and a handful of African states, HRW said it had documented more than a dozen cases of killings, kidnappings, enforced disappearance, and physical attacks targeting Rwandans abroad. Inside Rwanda, HRW details multiple cases of harassment, arbitrary detention, torture, and sometimes the disappearance of relatives of suspected dissidents, tactics apparently adopted to persuade exiles to censor themselves or return home. Rishi Sunak sees the Rwanda deal as a key plank of his election strategy and has indicated that if the Supreme Court's 5 judges find in the government's favour, he will ignore any further ECHR injunctions. If the judges find against the government, Braverman is expected to use that ruling as grounds to push for Britain to withdraw from the ECHR. The Supreme Court hearing is scheduled to last 3 days, with a decision expected 6 to 8 weeks later. Finland says undersea pipeline damage appears to be deliberate. The Finnish president has said damage to an undersea gas pipeline and communications cable connecting Finland and Estonia appeared to be deliberate. He said Helsinki was in contact with our allies and partners and the country was prepared and our readiness is good, adding that the incident had no effect on our supply security. The Finnish government said in a statement that authorities had discovered the damage to the Balti Connector natural gas pipeline and to a communication cable linking Finland and Estonia at about 2 a.m. local time on Sunday, midnight PST on Sunday morning. Finland and Estonia are EU and NATO members that border Russia and stopped importing Russian oil and gas as part of sanctions imposed against Moscow for its invasion of Ukraine. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said the transatlantic military alliance was ready to share information about the destruction of Finnish and Estonian underwater infrastructure and to support its allies. Local media reported that unnamed government sources had said that they suspected Russian sabotage. Konrad Muzyka, an independent regional defense analyst, said that the Russian hydrographic survey vessel Sibriakov had been detached in the Gulf of Finland near the pipeline and the Estlinks cable in May, August and September. Muzyka said, "It's highly likely Russians surveyed the pipe." The Finnish daily Iltalehti reported the pipeline was severely damaged and expected to be out of service for several months, with both the Finnish Border Guard and Defence Intelligence Agency reportedly investigating the incident. The paper said an unusual drop in pressure had been observed by both countries' gas network operators in the 77-kilometre pipeline which runs across the seabed of the Gulf of Finland from Inkoo in Finland to Paldiski in Estonia. Commissioned in 2019, the Baltic Connector has been Finland's only natural gas and import channel since Russian imports were halted in May last year. Natural gas accounts for about 5% of Finland's energy consumption. In September 2022, a series of underwater blasts ruptured 3 of the 4 pipelines that make up Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2, a major conduit for Russian natural gas exports to Western Europe, spewing gas into the Baltic Sea, Denmark and Sweden, and Germany undertook investigations into the attack. However, all 3 countries have maintained tight security around their inquiries. Edinburgh University study finds a smart scalpel could help doctors hone surgical skills. A new study suggests that scalpels with built-in sensors could streamline training for surgeons and pave the way for procedures performed by robotic devices. Researchers who studied data captured by the scalpel during trials found its sensors could accurately track how much force users were applying during surgical procedures and how they were controlling the device over time. Sensor data analysis showed the technology could assess this key skill as effectively as traditional evaluation methods which involve visual assessment by experienced practitioners. The Edinburgh University team behind the research said that further development could see the technology, which is equipped with a newly developed force sensing system used to assess a wide range of surgical skills, and the creation of robotic devices that can perform procedures safely and efficiently. The low-cost device, developed at the University of Edinburgh, consists of a scalpel connected to a sensor-loaded circuit board fitted inside its handle. The research team designed a machine learning model that analyzes data captured as force is applied by scalpel users. While the level of force applied is known to be important in surgery, there have been few tools until now capable of measuring it in real-life settings. These type of measurements have also never been used in traditional assessments of surgical skill, the team says. Researchers tested the new technology by tracking 12 medical students and 2 surgeons as they carried out a procedure known as an elliptical incision. The procedure, which involves making 2 curved cuts to the skin, is used to remove moles and skin lesions such as melanoma. Tests were performed on synthetic material made of gelatin and silicone that mimics the properties of human skin. Data analysis of each participant's skills was compared with naked eye assessments made by 4 surgical experts, 2 neuroscientists and 2 plastic surgeons. Results broadly matched surgical experts' assessments of each user's ability, suggesting this type of technology could help simplify the process of assessing surgical skills. The findings are published in the journal Communications Engineering. Professor Ram Ramamurthy of the University of Edinburgh School of Informatics said, "We're excited to develop this new system, which uses a combination of real-life sensing technology and machine learning methods to quantitatively assess surgical skill. This system will enable the development of new systems for skill assessment and training, and could one day lead to the creation of automated surgical devices that can assist surgical teams." The Scottish Government announced support for people with neurological conditions. 8 projects supporting people with neurological conditions are receiving a total of almost $440,000 to enable them to enhance and expand the services they provide. The Scottish Government funding is the 4th round of awards made as part of a 5-year action plan to improve support for people living with neurological conditions. One of the successful bids is a joint initiative by the Care Inspectorate and NHS Ayrshire and Arran, which has received $35,000 to be used to develop a national care network for care at home staff to share their experience of looking after people with different neurological conditions and how best to meet their needs. Minister for Public Health and Women's Health, Jenny Minto, said, 1 million people in Scotland live with a neurological condition, which is why we're committed to the Neurological Action Plan, as it supports various organisations to help these people to live well and on their own terms, regardless of where they stay. The framework contains $4.5 million investment over 5 years, and this latest allocation of funding will benefit a wide range of projects helping those living with a number of conditions, including cerebral palsy, spina bifida, multiple sclerosis, and functional neurological disorder. All of these innovative projects seek to ensure seamless access to high quality and coordinated health, social care, and third sector support in the right place at the right time. Scotland to co-host Euro 2028. The 2028 UEFA European Football Championships are set to come to Scotland as UEFA's Executive Committee confirmed the success of a joint UK and Ireland bid. The result was announced at a ceremony in Nyon, Switzerland today, where Scotland was represented at the ceremony by Scottish Football Association Chief Executive Ian Maxwell, Professor Mike Mulroney and Youth Ambassador Isla Buchanan. Matches in Scotland will be played at Hampden Park, which is among 10 stadia proposed to host Euro 2028, having successfully hosted 4 matches during Euro 2020. Glasgow will be one of 9 host cities across the UK and Ireland. First Minister Humza Yousaf said, "Football is Scotland's national game and a powerful force for good in communities right across the country. It's this combination which underpinned the Scottish Government's support for the successful joint bid. Hosting the Euros in Scotland will provide a range of opportunities, not only through the economic benefits of visiting fans, but through a strong legacy programme that will help grow a more inclusive and diverse game right across the country. The legacy vision of football for all, football for good, and football for the future captures the positive impact football has on our communities. Scotland has proven experience in hosting major events, and I look forward to continuing to work closely with the Scottish FA, Glasgow Life, and all other bid partners to deliver a welcoming, exciting, and safe Euro 2028. Well, that's it for this evening. Before I go, I just want to remind you that at Broadcasting Scotland, we depend on the generosity of our supporters. So to everyone who has donated and to everyone who signed up to make a regular monthly payment, thank you very much. Our programmes will always be free to view. However, if you can afford £5 a month, please consider becoming a Broadcasting Scotland supporter. Our need to reach our 30,000 target to pay our bills is still pressing. However, the generosity of our supporters has given us a little more time. We've now raised over £18,700 and we are able to continue making programmes for the next few weeks. However, our need to raise the remaining £11,300 is still really urgent. Good night and thank you for watching.